Bonjour, Ani. Hello and welcome. Samantha Indigenous Cause. My name is Samantha. Megizi Nadodam. I am of Eagle Clan. Wazoxing Nadonjaba. I'm from Wazoxing First Nation. Anishinaabe Minwa Nadao. I'm of Anishinaabe descent. So the panelists would like to acknowledge the areas that they live, work, and play. You will see it on the screen right there. So next slide. Good morning and welcome to the first panel of the day. We chose an uplifting and delightful positive conversation to start your day. Being sarcastic, but we do have a wonderful panel here today, a very diverse panel, diversity in science, diversity in size of their institutions, and diversity in how they've approached EDI. So we are also going to be using Menti today. So later on in the discussion, we will have some interactive polls. So please use phones, laptops to join. Instructions are on the screen. We will be getting your feedback as we engage in our conversation. Next slide, please. So when I was first asked to moderate this panel, I agreed to do this in a different world than we are in today. But we all agree, everybody here and obviously our panel, we all agree that EDI is important more now than ever. So I get to start about SNOLAB. So I am the Director of Corporate Services at SNOLAB. I've been there for 16 years. And in 2020, in response to Black Lives Matter, at the direction of our Executive Director at the time, we developed an action plan with SMART goals on how we could address EDI at SNOLAB. And it was very successful. And when we brought on our new Executive Director, Dr. Jody Cooley, Jody really wanted to make sure that EDI was, raveled through all of everything we do, our strategic planning, all of our goals, and all of our documentation. And we've started the next process and really formalized our EDI process, which we've just started our EDI committee. So we're in the process of creating our next plan, building a template on what that's going to look like to 2029. So I just wanted to highlight some of the things that we're really proud of what we do at SNOLAB. We've even published on some of the things that are happening in underground labs and how we can build best practices towards meeting our EDI initiatives. But I'm just the moderator. We have some great panelists here who would like to talk about their facilities. So Monique, I'd like to invite you to come up first. This works.
Okay, sorry, it's just the arrow?
Yep.
Perfect. Good morning. We've been asked to take 5 minutes to tell you a little bit about our organization, what we do, the size of our workforce, and our approach to EDI so far, so you understand a little bit about where we are along our journey. So my name is Monique Albert, I'm the COO, but I'm also the chair of the EDI committee, so I'm very involved in the work that we do to enhance these aims. So the Center for Biodiversity Genomics was established in 2005 and became its own distinct university research center in 2022. We envision a world where we read the biosphere with DNA to foster a global biomonitoring system. And we accomplish this by delivering 3 services to the biodiversity science community. That is sequencing, so that we can use DNA-based methods for species identification, informatics to support those activities, and organization to convene the global community. We have 6 research units that are situated across 4 buildings on campus and adjacent to campus. And that is populated by 131 individuals, 3 of which are faculty and 15% are trainees. We're hosted at the University of Guelph. And this allows us to access quite a lot of EDI supports through a number of offices, but most notably the Office of Diversity and Human Rights. This office allows us to access many services, one of which is training, for example. They have, I think now 15 separate training courses that we can take online and in person. We have accessibility resources, so if there's tools or resources we need to make our facilities more accessible, we can do that. They have consultation services. So if we want to know how can we make a better survey, or can you provide feedback on how we deploy this? Do we want feedback on how we insert appropriate EDI language into our grants? They're there for us. They have an enhancement fund, so we can ask for money to help us deploy or implement EDI-related activities. And they help with complaint resolutions as well. So we're quite well supported from a host perspective. But in coinciding with the CBG becoming its own distinct university research center, an EDI framework was launched along with that. So an EDI statement, an EDI policy, and we joined the 50/30 challenge under ICED. This framework is overseen by an EDI committee, which is populated by people from all of the research units and administrative units. And we're really centered on on three main pillars: learning and education, measuring and reflecting, and affirmative action. So I'll take you through a few of the things that we've done so far so you can see where we are in this journey. Again, highlighting we haven't been at it as long as Snow Lab has. It's been about 2 to 3 years now. So the EDI committee firstly focused on educating itself and ensuring that those of us who are on the committee have sufficient acumen to move forward with any initiatives in a responsible way. We're all science trained. We don't come from an EDI background. That wasn't our university background at all. So we needed to build up our own knowledge in this space so that we could move forward confidently. We did that by looking to others. So we looked at the 50/30 challenge, the toolkit. We joined communities of practice, which I attend monthly. We look to other organizations and learn from them, and we've consulted our own host institution. Then we took the best of the best, and we made that available to the workforce itself. We have 2 courses that we now have part of our regular onboarding program. We highlight EDI activities in our town halls and so on. We've done a fairly good activity around measuring in the past year. So we measured the workforce, both from a self-identification perspective, but also their workplace experiences. We measured our leadership, and then we measured our largest project, so all of the participants that extend beyond the walls of the CBG into our international collaborators. What we learned is that the CBG is far more diverse than we anticipated, and it also highlighted some important points on areas we could focus more deeply on to enhance the experiences of the people who work with us. And then finally, now that we know a little bit more, we have some confidence in how we want to proceed. We know more about the people that we work with on an everyday basis. We're now looking to how we apply these in action. And that's where we start to see impact. Some low-hanging fruit, we developed resources for people to write meaningful land acknowledgements that are specific to our organization and where we work. We wrote an equitable hiring policy, and now upcoming, we're looking to more broader activities, for example, accessibility audits in our primary assets that are public-facing, and then implementing our learnings from those audits, developing a code of conduct, and then bringing in celebratory activities. And I think I'll stop there and pass along. Ready?
Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I'm Girma from Windy Research Facilities. I'm an engineer, so my report will be picture-based, you know. Windy, excuse me. Windy stands for Wind Engineering, Environment, and Energy. And we have 3 facilities. One of them is a dome. It's a one-of-a-kind facility. And we have the bound layer wind tunnel, a historical wind tunnel. That was established. Thank you so much. Okay. That was established when our founder, Alan Davenport, was approached to work on the World Trade Center Twin Towers. You know, since then, We had a legacy of wind engineering, and we kept building on thanks to CFI support mainly. Then we have a Three Little Pig laboratory as well. In the first two, what we do is we literally recreate the micro environment in a small scale, and with toy building, we study the aerodynamics. But in the third one, the Three Little Pig, we go to the full-scale structure. What we learned from the laboratories, we apply and we see how things fell, and so that we strengthen them in the future, or if there is more strength, we optimize it in the future. And yes, from the science perspective, when you have turbulence, it's very difficult to do computationally. That's why we keep building big facilities. But most of the climate issues, they are not only wind, it is wind, and for example, in the case of Los Angeles, it's wildfire, or in case of hurricanes, wind and flood. When you have multi-physics problem, what we do is we collaborate, I saw David Tweedle here, with Digital Research Alliance of Canada, and we do multi-physics problems.
Press the button.
Next. Oh, sorry. I thought someone was controlling.
The green one.
Oh, is it this one? Or? The green, okay. Oh, yes, big. Okay. This is the inside of the Wind E. On the top figure, we have 8 full-time equivalent staff, and we are a diverse group of people. And this is what we do. Like, for example, this is a Don Robin tornado not far from this place in 2018. A tornado touched down and destroyed that neighborhood, and we studied that neighborhood. The way we approach EDI, it's a front-heavy process. Most of the equity-seeking members, they need encouragement. For example, on the slide you see Kate. She was our undergrad student, and we use LinkedIn a lot. What I noticed was when we post something, she kept looking at those posts. Then one day I invited her. You seem to be interested. Why don't you come and talk to us? That simple conversation led to 2 undergraduate research, 1 thesis, 1 master, and she graduated 94% average from Western, while being the female athlete of the year in 2022. And she represented us in Olympic last year, in Paris Olympic. So you need that first encouragement. Usually the equity-seeking folks, they have, even when they come to our lab, after you poke them, there's a wide, diverse skill. Then we need to be attentive of that fact and create training and things like that. So we take that first approach, to encourage equity-seeking folks to come and work with us. This goes throughout the different users we have, whether it is a graduate student or industry users or faculties. Throughout the sample project I have, you will see the fruit of that effort. By the way, this is her doing a project from the northern community. That's also the other diversity we seek to achieve. What we do, it shouldn't only cater to the well-to-dos. We have to identify problems where our underserved communities, like the northern communities, so we intentionally target those kind of projects as well from the research perspective. We work with different organizations. One of them is the National Research Council, developing building codes and standards. The outcome of our research typically goes into improving how we design things. And Marianne in the center is a director, and we work with wide spectrum of people. And thanks to the support we are receiving both from CFI and EU, we are able to attract different users. Like, for example, in the middle, a professor from Munich visited us to develop code for spatial structure. Another professor, Elena from Bucharest, they have a lot of downburst, this kind of wind system, and she brought her team and we worked on this project. This is an interesting project we did with one very famous artist, Canadian artist, Edward Burtonsky. He wanted to represent the climate issue through whale skeleton, and this is like 25 plus meter tall. That's coming in Kingston, and we worked with Queens. And we do a lot of intentional outreach activity, with equity seeking group, you have to start your action way earlier, You have to go to the high school and bring them to the lab. Today's high school students, they are tomorrow undergraduate students. A day after tomorrow, they are your PhD student. And then after tomorrow, they are your clients, your users, You have to invest early on. And we are very active with indigenous school. There is a SHAD program, a national program. Our lab almost, I would say, every week we have an outreach activity, and we target diverse group, and that's it. Thank you.
I'm the Director of Engagement and Knowledge Mobilization at Ocean Networks Canada. I use she, her pronouns. I am a white woman. I'm a settler to Canada. I'm also a chemist by training. And I do speak with an accent. So those are just some dimensions of who I am and how complex they interact. So at Ocean Networks Canada, in my previous role as Director of Corporate Services, I was the executive member responsible for our EDI initiatives. So just briefly what we do at Ocean Networks Canada. So we operate ocean observatories in the deep and coastal ocean at all 3 coasts of Canada and in the Southern Ocean, actually, and collect a whole host of high-resolution sensor measurements that then the data that gets collected, we provide that in a research-ready format on the internet free in a curated manner to about 30,000 users a year. And that on this slide here, you can see, well, maybe you can see some of the services and solutions that the data that our facility provides enables. And that includes, for example, supporting ocean management, hazard mitigation, and environmental protection measurements. So we provide services for science, society, and industry. We do this in close partnership and collaboration with and for in support of local indigenous communities within Canada, with the scientific community, and of course supporting government mandates and industry as well. So by the numbers, we are one of the first 4 facilities that were funded through the MSI Fund in 2006, so we've been around for quite some time. We have one host institution, that is the University of Victoria on Vancouver Island. We have about 170 staff members, and even though our infrastructure is distributed across the country, really, the majority of our staff sit in 2 locations, in 2 buildings, about 30 kilometers apart from each other, which provides a barrier in itself on the Saanich Peninsula on Vancouver Island. And our staff is quite diverse. We have everybody from administrative staff to engineers, technicians, software specialists, scientists, even teachers on our staff. So that provides quite a variety in itself. Our staff are all employed by the University of Victoria. Many of them are covered through bargaining units, so they are protected through collective agreements. We have about 70% of our staff are in continuing positions, and about 30% are in term positions working on specific projects. And then we, of course, bring in co-ops and other people. We have a board of directors, we have an International Science Advisory Board, and we have a Ocean Observatory Council, which really represents our user communities and gives us much more tactical advice on a day-to-day basis. So our EDI journey really is quite linked to how we have evolved as an organization over the years. And it was quite organic in the beginning, where we were simply trying to implement organizational best practices. And then that became, over the last 10 or so years, and in particular since 2020, much more intentional in terms of articulating specific EDI goals, forming EDI committees, and when I say committees, I mean both internally at ONC as well as our board of directors has formed an EDI working group, so it permeates throughout the entire organization. We joined the 50-30 Challenge early on in 2021 and have since formalized our commitments. Another milestone that's shown here on this slide is that in 2015, we started really developing together with our staff organizational values and guiding behaviors that really drive and set a milestone for us on how we want to show up in the world, in our behaviors. And we established a learning and community engagement division, which also was quite a milestone. A lot of our journey or activities actually have been driven by outside events, first of how we grew, then by, as our networks and partnerships increased, we learned to work with our user communities and to support our user communities. So it was a very interactive process. The pandemic had a big influence on what we did, as well as the requirements by our funding agencies in terms of what we have to do and how we have to report and how we have to show up. That has been really important in terms of driving some of our activities. So our motivation really is we realize that creating creative solutions really require challenging the conventions of how we work together. So what we set ourselves, the goal we set ourselves, is to remove barriers to participation both internally for our staff, for our users in the services we provide, and in our interactions with our partners. We want to be a trusted partner that really supports the work and their priorities. And we think we can do this by expanding on who is engaged in setting priorities, who is engaged in designing initiatives and determining the successes. And that can really help us shift old ingrained power dynamics. So some of the tools and initiatives we use, a big strength I think we have is that we have one host institution that really has spend a lot of effort and resources in terms of developing an equity action plan, and their goals that has just been recently launched, and that plan not just says EDI, but it has an added A for accountability, and I think that is really important in terms of how we approach the EDI challenge. So we're quite engaged with that, and there's a lot of resources that we can draw on and adapt to our own unique circumstance. As a major facility, we are somewhat different than many of the departments within the university, but really the strength lies in there's a big body that gives us a lot of resources that we can draw on. So we provide a lot of training, we have good hiring practices, we have flexible work arrangements. One recent thing that we found is really important is we're working towards building a respectful, inclusive work environment. So that is our overarching goal. And we think one thing that's really important for that is having a conflict-competent culture. So we really launched the Difficult Conversations training program, which will help us all in dealing with actually a lot of challenges that underrepresented groups face, as well as everything else. We have embedded EDI activities and priorities in our program planning process. That is an interactive process that really actively incorporates our staff. So it goes bottom up and top down as well. So that helps us ensure that we hear all the voices both internally, but our staff also speak for our user communities. So we're bringing that information back in through that. And we have a process, an internal process, where anybody in the organization has the ability to formally submit new ideas for implementation. We do use surveys quite extensively to assess how we're doing. And I think that's really a good way to get sort of new ideas, asking those open-ended questions as well. In terms of metrics, What I'm showing you on this slide is what we are assessing both internally, what we're doing for our facility and data users and our partners. And the check marks here don't mean we're doing it well. They just mean we think we have data that actually is of sufficient quality to inform our assessment of whether or not we're making progress in those areas. The other areas with the square there, we are collecting some data, but we think we can do better in those regions. And really what we're missing right now is in terms of diversity metrics, we really only have access to gender. That will change. UVic, our host institution, has recently launched the Better Data project, which allows through self-identification to collect more dimensions, and that will really allow us to see whether our initiatives are successful, not only on a broader level in terms of being good for our entire organization and our user community, but really drill deep down into whether we are reaching the underrepresented communities and making headways for those too. So with that, I think I thank you and hand over to the next person.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to be on this panel. So my name is Meredith McLaren. I'm the CEO of CGen. CGen is Canada's national platform for genome sequencing and analysis. So we provide genomic services that enable the Canadian international research community with high-quality genomic data. And our facility is spread across 3 nodes. So these 3 nodes existed for many, many years and came together in 2015 as CGen. And we were funded in 2017 through the MSI program. So I'd also like to highlight that CGen supports projects that require large-scale data generation, so we have the capacity to support these projects that are more and more in the future will be coming to the forefront. So as I mentioned, we're funded primarily through the CFI, and we also have investments from provincial governments, Genome Canada, and others. In terms of our users and staff, just a few numbers here. So we have over 1,100 principal users in the last year. And I'd just like to mention that our users are based on the PI lab. So there's many, many HQP, of course, associated with each of these PIs. So that number is a lot higher. In terms of diversity of our users, we have users across many sectors, including, of course, health, conservation and biodiversity, agriculture, and many other sectors. We also have diversity in terms of the organizations that we support, of course, academic institutions, government agencies, not-for-profits, and also private sector companies come to use our services. And just a little tidbit in terms of the data that is generated. So one of our most popular genomic applications is whole genome sequencing. We produced over 16,000 whole genome sequences last year, and that's equivalent to 30,000 4K movies. And just to let you know, that will take you 7 years to watch nonstop. So it's a lot of data that we produce. And of course, underlying all of this is advanced technologies, but also we have over 200 staff that are highly trained and highly experienced. As I mentioned, we have 3 nodes, so these staff are employed across these three institutions. And just at a highest level, they're involved in consultations with our users, facility oversight, operations. They're also involved in data generation and processing of that data. And of course, we have administrative staff that supports all of this. So in terms of CGen's approach to, we call it IDEA, so inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. As we have 3 institutions, our previous approach to IDEA was to leverage the policies and strategies of our institutions. And around 2020, late 2022, we did make the move to be more intentional in terms of how we approach IDEA at CGen. So in that light, we hired a manager who was dedicated to inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility in 2023. And the idea here was really to take that existing action plan based on the host institutions to the next level. And so that manager created an idea committee, and the membership of that committee are from all CGEN nodes, so across the 3 institutions. And this committee, like you've heard from others, is involved in all aspects of ideas, so that we don't have only one person directing what those activities are going to be. So this manager also interacted with some of the other MSI facilities to learn some of the best practices that were already established for some MSIs that had maybe begun their journey a little bit earlier. So one of the first things that our manager did was to create an idea survey. So this was for our 200 staff. And this was conducted in spring of 2023. And the survey included both qualitative and quantitative questions. And the idea for this survey was to guide the development of a strategic action plan, which would come later on, and also to have a reference for measuring change over time. And I just wanted to highlight this in my last slide, just a few of the survey results that came out of this. And you can see there's a QR card at the bottom. All of the results are available on our website. We've put them all together into a report. So we had a response rate of about 50%, which is pretty good. And you can see some of the highlights of the data on the right-hand side there. And what we found was, like the CBG, we are quite diverse in terms of our workforce. We were comparable to the Canadian population in many respects. There was definitely opportunity for improvement in some areas. And what you can see is that when some of the qualitative questions, that many of our staff feel included and feel that they can express themselves in the workplace, which is great, but it's not 100%, so there's always area for improvement there. We also took an intersectional look at the data. So looking at, for example, both people who identify as women and also as racialized. And what we found was that there was an area of growth in terms of making those people feel that they had the opportunities for advancement within the organization. And we also noted that for some people, they were not aware of institutional policies, for example, for accommodation or for reporting EDI-related events in the workplace. And the survey also looked at asking the respondents if they had ideas for educational topics which would be of value for them. And some of those are in the bottom right-hand corner as well. So all of this information was used to inform our strategic action plan, which was launched fairly recently. So we are now feeling like we are very prepared for the next few years in terms of the activities that we will take. And this will, of course, evolve over time. And I think in the discussion, we can highlight some of the activities that we've taken. Thank you.
So for this portion, we're going to have some conversation. So the questions that I'm going to ask the panel are not the same as the screen. So you can feel free using the code, the Menti code, put in your information. We are interested to see what you guys are doing because you now know what we're doing. And then we're going to have a little conversation with some questions about what these institutions are doing. And for ease, we're going to go in, Mikey's, we're going to go in order. So Monique. How have your survey results been used to inform EDI initiatives within your MSI?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I'm a big fan of evidence-based decision-making. I believe that the more informed we are, the better prepared we are to make informed decisions on what we should do next. What kind of training is needed specific to our organization and our workforce? What kind of initiatives will have the most impact? So I think the survey itself was incredibly informative. We asked, not only dimensions around self-identification, but we asked, are you experiencing issues in the workplace? Have you observed anything that you believe could be improved? Where do you think we should focus our activities? Do you know where to go for help, or how to, who to ask if there's an EDI or human rights related question? So all of that was incredibly informative, and that's what's directing us next to what's going to come in the next few years. So yeah, I think that's primarily it. So that's going to identify where supports are really warranted.
Perfect, thank you. Meredith?
Yeah, I mean, similar, and I commented right there about, how the survey is informing our strategic action plan, and completely agree that it's very important to hear from the people that are going to be looking to the MSI to, guide what's happening for them in the workplace. And I just wanted to note, I think on top of that is for us, it also provided an opportunity to open up these conversations because we had a point person. The staff knew that there was somewhere where they could go and ask questions, and it actually enabled kind of follow-up conversations where people were reaching out to our manager to ask more, or to reflect more, or to provide more information about their experiences. And that really helped to kind of, I think, bring specific kind of needs to the forefront, so that could be incorporated into our actions moving forward.
I'm hearing building trust. Every time, building trust is important. Germa?
Yes. From our perspective, we use the surveys and the information out there. Particularly, I'm looking at actually this response. If you look at the gender identity in engineering, particularly, only 20% of our engineering population are women. Then we have this kind of information, and what we do, and coupled with our own lived experience, we take a front-heavy approach. We have observed, especially the equity-deserving people, they need that first encouragement, to join whatever we are doing, And luckily, we have LinkedIn, and we use LinkedIn a lot, like both as a researcher and as a facility. We have LinkedIn website, and we post, and anything we post reaches out to thousands of people, targeted people who are professionally linked to us, Then we monitor that, and we take that extra action. Not only that, whatever we do, EDI is really convoluted with what we do. For example, we attend a minimum of maybe 10, 11 conferences, different aspect of different member of our team. And we always keep the EDI idea in our mind. When we see, for example, researchers, you saw a couple of female professors from Europe who came doing a test, we met them in conference, whatever they do. Oh, by the way, do you know there's a facility in Canada, you could use it, and thanks to EU Horizon collaboration, even before our Prime Minister signed the agreement, even before that, we took that extra step based on our uniqueness to be part of that, Then we started attracting people. And the outcome is encouraging. For example, I am a black professor, I have to say it loud, Just because I'm black, out of the 24 PhD students I graduated, 12 of them were black, They are looking for a role model, One of them became a McGill professor, and he is the only black professor in the entire engineering faculty, So I'm sure he will continue this, Then what I'm trying to say is, like, being intentional and creating role models and following the statistics and the surveys and acting on it in a very organic manner. Particularly, it's a long process, doing it early on. Like I see when I go to places, like maybe the student I see from a black community could be joining a university for the first time, you know. They don't know so many things about university environment and things like that. Being aware of that, you know, the fact that they don't know, it doesn't indicate any meritorious shortcoming, you know. They were not exposed, you know, just expose them, you know. Monitor their outcome after the training, not before the training, you know. And I can give you so many that type of example, you know, being intentional and helping them, encouraging them. They need a tapping at the back, you know. Then you will be surprised, you know. By the way, diversity is very strong, you know. Look, gathered there on the news premier of Quebec, I heard him saying, you know, oh, we are sending 75% of our export to the United States. We need to diversify, you know. So diversity is strength, it is meritorious, and I think we need to act on those surveys and do it organically.
So I'm just digesting, and I hear prioritize equality of opportunity rather than equality of the outcome, like level the playing field rather
Yes.
than moving the bar.
Yeah, the quality of the outcome, actually, I'm one of the proponents. The quality comes, you know, but the equity aspect, you know, when we start at the beginning, like, for example, if I look at equity-seeking group, when they come to our team, there are certain things that are really good. There are certain things that are not well informed. You know, then as institute, as educator, as researcher, we have to be aware of that fact and help them. Then the product at the end, it is all similar. You know, it is the kind of effort, the kind of method that you use. It has to match to the problem they have. You know, because that unique approach is needed. You know, their experience is different. You know, like I will give you an example. We are lab intensive. When you bring a person to the lab, a typical Canadian student who grew up with toys and everything, day one, you know, they feel it is another big toy, you know. But there are other group of people who doesn't have that kind of experience. It is blank, you know. Then you have to be aware, then prepare extra training to open their exposure, you know, their imagination. Once you open that, the final outcome, actually they catch up, you know. It is that kind of effort that we need upfront, you know.
Daniela?
Yeah, so we put quite a bit of effort into redesigning our staff survey a few years ago, and we've now run it twice. And it's a staff engagement survey that has an EDI component as part of that. So out of the 70 questions that we ask, there's around 11 that really try to get at the EDI component. And I think the building trust part is really important, because the first time we did it, we actually had a really good response rate. We had about 75% who participated, which is huge. But what we really learned from that was that there's really a broad spectrum where each of our staff members are with respect to their own EDI journey in terms of what they know, whether or not they even buy into it, or whether they just think this shouldn't be part of our day-to-day work life. So we get the whole spectrum. And then what do you do with that? So we communicated the results back to our staff in an anonymized form. Of course, we did have the ability to drill into sort of the different work units a little bit, and we were upfront about this and helped our managers to work with their staff as well. And then we had the sense there really was a question from our staff. Well, okay, you've done it, and now what? Is there actually anything coming out of that? Are you doing anything with it? So the follow-through was really important. So there were a few action items that were identified out of that. We implemented that. We did a pulse survey to see, okay, have we addressed, a big one was communication. have we addressed that in any way, shape, or form? And then we just ran the survey again and with a similar response rate. And then this time around, what we did was we created focus groups that came out of the survey to discuss and address and come forward with suggestions from our staff. And we found the most powerful part of the survey actually was the open-ended questions, because there's where new ideas come forward. There's where you really can hear some of these are the things that are bugging people. So it's that combination of quantitative and qualitative data that's really important to drive you forward. But I think what we're seeing is there's a much bigger buy-in into the process. And then some of the recommendations that came out of the survey found their way into our program plan that's visible to all. So it's very clear, it's very, very transparent about this is what we're going to do. And it's important for us as an organization that we're doing this. So we're communicating that to all our staff members.
Perfect, thank you. So for the audience, you have your next question. And for the panel, so what were the highest value EDI initiatives or activities at your organization this year?
Yeah, thank you. So I think there's not one in particular. I think there's a few that work together, right? I think number one is our research projects. Our research programs are intentionally diverse, so the people that are assigned to our major research programs are bringing that diversity to the table to advance our research aims. I think that's a really important feature. Another thing we did, I mean, the surveys are incredible, and I can't understate how important it is to have that information to inform what we do next. But one of the things that came out of conversations that we had over the past year is that there was a need for more communication between the levels of our workforce, so from workforce all the way up through leadership. So we've introduced, a staff engagement committee, for example, that helps us to advance EDI aims, but also improve communication along all levels so that we can have these meaningful conversations. I think those things have been really, really helpful in the past year.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The survey was very, very useful, and I think there's still data that we can look into there. We're running our survey every 2 years, so we will be doing it again quite soon. So it'll be great to see over time, the changes or the new ideas, or more engagement that we'll get now that we've run it one time. I think that the things that came out of the survey and informed our strategic action plan, were for the education session. So there were specific educational topics that were brought up through the survey, and those topics were explored across our 3 nodes. And also, another thing that came up, as I mentioned, was that some staff weren't feeling like they were having the opportunities for growth that maybe others were. So we're actually piloting at one of our nodes a mentorship program. So it's very, very new, but there's, I think, 13 or 14 both mentees and mentors that signed up. So there's good engagement. And they're talking about all kinds of different things, including kind of developing technical skills, leadership skills, management skills. And the idea is that in 6 months' time, we'll reevaluate that program and see if there's ways to improve it. But I think the survey has been great for kind of identifying areas of need and giving us kind of the data behind the activities. And similar to Danielle, it's important to have that feedback to the staff to show that it's not just a survey to do a survey, but actually to move forward and use the information that the staff is providing to make improvements.
As a small MSI facility, we do a little bit of everything. One thing core to our belief is whatever we do, it has to be integrated with EDI objectives. When we form a board, for example, out of the 8, one of them is EDI expert, and we have a committee on EDI and training that reports to the board and that trains the staff, the HQ piece and things like that. And something that I'm really proud is the outreach activity that we do. Actually, WINDE, we are located at the University of Western Ontario. We are very active in outreach, very targeted outreach. For example, there are local indigenous schools. When it comes to indigenous community, for example, we go even deep to elementary school, high school, wherever we could find, we are patient, Then high school students, university, and different organizations, targeted type of outreach. We almost have an outreach activity every week in our facility. And Adrian, he's sitting somewhere here. I keep him super busy in that, And with HQP, as I mentioned earlier, we are very conscious, especially based on my own lived experience. I'm super conscious on those type of things, and luckily the university is very supportive. There's EDI department. We work closely with them, and we do those subtle things that will make a difference. Understanding what the character of EDI deserving folks and acting organically in that. And finally, the result is beautiful. So we do a little bit of everything. Of course, when it comes to survey, I admit when you have 8+ people with these huge facilities, it is engineer heavy, Then we lack some of the skills even to conduct proper surveys. We count on other surveys done by the large MSI laboratories and professional engineers. Actually, in preparation to this, I learned a lot from the other MSI folks, and I think what we need to do is perhaps the small MSI facilities can tap into the skill set of the large MSI and learn, and that kind of lateral learning, Yeah, thank you.
Daniela?
Yeah, I'm looking at the screen here and I see time and resources as a big issue in terms of holding MSIs back from implementing EDI practices. And I would say for us, the really impactful initiative was the foundation of the Learning and Community Engagement Department in 2016 or so, which meant that we made the decision to dedicate a significant amount of organizational resources actually to support reconciliation and to really work towards supporting indigenous communities in their own data collection, enhancing capacity that was already present in communities, but really supporting guardians and stewards for collecting their own data, really understanding what the needs of the communities are and what the realities within Canada are. And I think that really has helped us do our work in a better and more thoughtful and intentional way. And it has helped us embed really the will of every single person at our organization to learn more and advance their own understanding of what Indigenous communities face and what their own role is. We currently have a cohort of about 26 people who are actually undergoing a year-long training program on Indigenous cultural acumen that they work on together as part of that from all different departments. And I think that really speaks to the need for dedicated resources to do this, and I think that applies to EDI initiatives as well. Oftentimes EDI work, it's framed as being important, but you leave it up to a committee to deal with it. The committee is made up out of volunteers. They have another job. How do they prioritize that work over other work unless it's really embedded in the organization and you make the time for it? And that often is just simply not the case. So I think that is yeah.
Perfect, thank you. So we have one more question. We're getting the pulse here. And then for my panel, what would help you to initiate more EDI activities?
Okay, this is a good question. What's going to help us do more? I think the first thing that comes to mind is money and resources, but that's an easy answer. I think what we would like, or what I would like, is benchmarking data. I want to know how we compare to our peers. So if, as we're doing activities and as we're implementing these plans forward and we're moving the needle within our own organization, we want to be able to compare to our peers and determine whether or not we're doing well in that regard. So I think information from our peer organizations is important. Connection with others at these other organizations or others who are trying things from different perspectives, so we can learn from that and learn from what works and maybe what doesn't work, so that we don't get tripped up in the same way. I think that would be really, really helpful. So connecting to others, more opportunities for us to convene and share these learnings like what we're doing today, but maybe in other more focused settings would be very helpful to us. Let me see if I made any other notes here. Yeah, I think that's the key of it. So funds for action, connection to others, and benchmarking data.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I completely agree. That was my answer. I think that would be really valuable to kind of get together at the MSI level or other kind of facilities and just learn from each other and get new ideas of what we can do and what maybe doesn't work and what can work. I think, for us at CGEN specifically, as I mentioned, we have staff across 3 institutions. So what we've realized is that, there's a balance between kind of doing things centrally at our kind of CGEN level, but also navigating kind of priorities and strategies at these 3 different institutions, and really kind of being able to assess readiness at our nodes to implement some of these activities and what would be valuable for them. So for us, I think it's about kind of understanding that even more deeply, so that we can really be effective in the activities that we're proposing.
Grandma?
Yes. Samantha, can you repeat the question?
Oh, yes. What would help you initiate more EDI activities?
What?
What would help you? What would help when you?
Yes. I think she was mentioning clearly the resources, like especially small MSIs. Just when you deal with the kind of project we did, we are so excited, we are happy, but we are stretched, Then I think resource, EDI needs resource, and I think more resource would be helpful.
I think we need the data. I think it's really important to collect the EDI data and to share it across organizations and to be able to help us really analyze which initiatives work, which ones don't, so that we can get into the measuring aspect and putting our resources where we can actually make a difference. But for that, we do need the data, and we are all working in data-driven organizations. So I think by having cold hard facts, it will help us actually drive our agenda forward in a better way. And I do think the funding organizations need to keep asking us to incorporate those activities in what we're doing.
Stop stealing my thunder.
Sorry.
So we do have one more question for the table group. So we're hoping not all teams sat together, so there's a little bit of diversity of organization at your table. But we did want to get the tables for about 10 minutes to think about these questions. We will collect some of this information, not preparing an official report, but we will ask you to, and then the next slide, to enter it in so other people can see. But we're interested to see, just start some small conversations at your table for about 10 minutes, and then enter your data into the Menti so we can all take a look, and then we're almost done. So please, 10 minutes, have a discussion, let us know your thoughts. So this panel spent a lot of time preparing, having a lot of discussions, talking to other MSIs, talking to our VPRs. And I think what we've realized is that MSIs are well poised, right at the front and center of research and innovation to implement EDI practices and to be world leading in this area. So I think this is a time that we need to take the opportunity to do that. So we have a call to action back to CFI, and it's not asking for money, promise. Yet. But for this journey, I think what we've come to understand is there is an EDI journey here. It starts with training, it moves to measurement, to implementation, and then to evaluation. And I think with the smaller MSIs, even with some of the larger, the training's available, we can find the training, but what we're lacking is the data and the measurement. So that's where we need CFI. And we call on CFI to take the next steps to support all the MSIs in establishing processes and understanding best practices for the collection of self-identification data. So not quite getting into money yet, but how do we do this? You ask for a lot of data from us already. How can we incorporate this without too much work? Because we understand that people are already, we do have a lot of reporting to do and there is a lot of data to gather. How do we do this without being burdensome on the MSIs so that we can compare to our peer organizations, but set some benchmarking and understand how we can improve. So with that, I want to thank everybody for their attention. Merci.